Good morning, afternoon, or evening, whichever the case may be, and welcome to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology's System Design and Management Program's Systems Thinking webinar series. My name is Lois Slavin. Today's webinar, as you know, is on intrusion prevention systems. We are very, very pleased to feature Dr. Charles Ihigwora, a very distinguished alum from our program. And with that, I am going to turn it over to him.
Thank you, Louis. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening for those of you tuning in from Asia. Today's discussion is going to revolve around how we implement intrusion prevention solutions. And for that matter, we are going to x-ray what we know works very well, what we know needs to be improved upon. And that is the reason why, as titled here, implementing better with the right intrusion prevention solutions, a computer-implemented logic that performs artificial decision-making analysis is going to let us take a deep dive into what organizations do to protect their network systems, and for that matter, the pitfalls that are evident from failed implementations. So we are going to focus our discussion on primarily the tools, the techniques, and the loopholes to be closed. In so doing, we are going to follow the following outline. We are going to present a brief introduction on the concepts and the key issues. Then we are going to look at the growing intrusion trends, followed by what enterprises do today to implement their solutions, and certainly the ramifications with unfit solutions, implementing with unfit solutions. We are finally going to take a look at a new method of addressing the concerns, which is essentially the development of a SaaS to call intrusion point. And then certainly we are going to summarize our discussions. As Louis stated, we are going to take your questions, I think 10 to 15 minutes towards the end of the presentation. So please feel free to ask questions, note them down, and ask me at the end of my presentation. Introduction. Let's start by asking ourselves this question: what is intrusion prevention? I'm sure that all of you have different definitions, and for that matter, understand what that means. But for the sake of this discussion, let's assume that to answer this question, we are going to define intrusion as any unauthorized access into an entity's network or systems. Then we can define intrusion prevention as a preemptive approach used to identify potential threats and responding to them swiftly and accordingly. So then that means that certainly we have to take a look at what organizations do, enterprises. What are the methods there? Well, there are different methods. Typically, at the enterprise level, this would entail deployment of security products and solutions such as firewalls, identity management systems, intrusion detection and prevention systems, and such other products or solutions as threat isolation solutions. But we are going to limit today's discussion to intrusion prevention systems in the realm of firewalls, IDS, IPS. Now, let's look at some of the concerns out there today. There are some designable trends. First, we know that intrusion into enterprise networks have continued to grow unabated. We have examples of the recent hacks at Sony, Hollywood, University of Maryland, College Park, Target stores, and certainly the U.S. Office of Personnel Management. And looking at an article by David Weldon, the article is titled U.S. Cyber Health Report, and we are going to explain this a little bit later. He finds out that even though companies spend a fortune on cybersecurity products and deployments, the companies are not implementing well, they are underperforming. And he's attributed this in this special report to ineffective implementations. And specifically, if we have to quote David, he asserts that despite all the attention that cybersecurity is getting and all the money that large corporations pour into intrusion prevention and detection, the majority of large organizations are underperforming when it comes to safeguarding their systems. And of course, we know that this is true. For example, I was in one U.S. Senate session that is devoted to finding out what can be done to equip the society and economy better with a better trained workforce. It was revealed that at any given time, at least at the present time, we are short of cybersecurity experts in any number ranging from 500,000 to more than 1 million. And so when we talk about companies underperforming, even though evidence abounds that they are spending a fortune on buying these security solutions, then something must be wrong. Largely, one of the factors is because we don't have a good workforce to implement these solutions. And also what is interesting about the report is that the companies analyze what we would call Fortune 500 organizations according to Standards and Poor's. These companies represent about 75% of the American equity market by capitalization, and they are also among the leading targets of cyber security attacks. For example, Sony. Sony is a big company, and everyone would wonder why they would fail. But again, despite the huge amount spent, for example, in 2013, at any given time, we have these troubling statistics that between 68 to 82% of these companies are hacked. And in this article, what is referred to hacking here, intrusion, is externally observable security event. There are so many charts and figures and statistics out there to quote, one of which is the one from GAO and the USAT. You can see the trend here. Although this chart is belated, I was looking at better graphs. Most of them were presented in different forms. But this serves to illustrate that there is a growing trend. And specifically, if you look at the article, all right, that is quoted, this trend has a direct relation with ineffective deployments. Very, very important. And so the question is, how do organizations prevent intrusions in their networks today? It's very, very important because on the one hand, we are talking about ineffective deployments. And so it's important for us to understand what is going wrong, what we're not doing well, how organizations implement their intrusion prevention solutions today. Well, largely we know that organizations will deploy intrusion detection and prevention devices, notably firewalls, including, by the way, the next generation firewalls. Intrusion prevention systems are standalone, and of course, in some cases, intrusion detection systems. And then, of course, other devices that include threat isolation solutions and system-specific measures. But for the sake of this discussion, we are going to focus on firewalls, including next generation intrusion prevention systems and intrusion detection systems. Now, we know that there are several products out there from any number of sources you could call them, but the most frequently used and quoted is Gartner, NHS Labs, and others like Forrester Research. Some of the leading vendors are the big guys, such as Checkpoint, Fortinet, McAfee, Cisco, etc. And we know that the tools come in different forms, all right, from different class families, such as firewalls. And by the way, when we say next generation firewalls here, it's just on purpose, because next generation firewalls is at the intersection of the traditional firewalls and intrusion detection systems, all right? So next generation firewalls have bundled some of these functionalities into them. So, but it's very, very important to recognize that we have a varied mix from different class families as listed here. And as I said, it's noteworthy that, as we are going to see in a short while, the leader today seems to be, or the industry direction seems to be headed to next generation firewalls that increasingly is being sold or provided as add-on to existing firewalls. Now, what we also know is that, as reported by David Weldon, organizations spend a lot of money. Can you believe this, that the projection is that in 2017 we are going to hit the $120 billion mark? That is in spending. That's the cybersecurity market, what's going with what up. But also we know that currently less than 40% of internet connections are secured using next generation firewalls. And we also know that by the end of 2014, about 35% of all installed internet connections using firewalls are of not the traditional type, but the next generation firewalls. And then with about 60% of all new purchases also being next generation firewalls and not the traditional firewalls, with the rest being intrusion prevention systems. We also know that from the same statistics, only about 65% of enterprises have standalone intrusion prevention systems. And so what we see in the field is that for organizations that are very, very conscious of security, what we call high security organizations, in addition to installing firewalls, they also deploy intrusion prevention systems as standalone solutions. And therefore, the paradox here is that whereas, as we can see from this chart, whereas revenue is growing, that is in terms of absolute terms, the percentage of intrusion prevention systems installation is decreasing, and that is just because next generation firewalls are increasingly bundling their functionalities. So by and large, the IPS and NGFW market is representative of an economy that increasingly is trying to grapple with the rising trends in terms of intrusion incursions, and while at the same time still trying to figure out what the next option or solutions are. Now, the question from all of this is, again, as we note in this article, why do we have a great many implementations out there failing? Well, when we talk about ineffective implementations, that's understood, but what are the factors? Well, we know that the effectiveness of any cybersecurity product, for that matter, depends on several factors, primarily of which is selecting the right solution for the right environment. And of course, the background here is that we have hundreds of cybersecurity products there, be them intrusion prevention systems, next generation firewalls, etc. Yes, we have thousands of them in the marketplace, but some of them are better in different functional areas of performance for different environments. In other words, it is not enough for organizations while trying to buy their products, go out there relying on vendor sales pitches, or going out there seeking out paid references from the big companies such as Gartner, NSS, and others like Forrester Research Corporation. Largely, these organizations will go to them and pay out some money, read what is trending, and then make their buying decisions. However, what is obvious is that these are not custom-made references. For example, Gartner is going to give you a big picture. NSS Lab is also going to give you a big picture. Let's take a look at this chart here, for example. NSS Lab comes up with the SVM, which is the security value map. Essentially, they conduct tests on different vendor products from Palo Alto Networks, Cisco Systems, etc. And then they will rank them after conducting exhaustive tests. Those tests would include anything from stress tests, wire speed of these devices, ability for them to dictate intrusion in real time, etc. So in the end, they come up with what is called the security effectiveness. All right. So, but we do know that yes, the security effectiveness for each product is truly represented here. However, how does that fit an individual's unique requirement? So that's the missing link from this here. Also, when you look at Gartner, Gartner turns out a lot of market reports on different services and products, and they are truly great. However, also, at least as represented here for in the Magic Quadrant for enterprise network firewalls, you can see the quadrant. In the quadrant here, they have designated some vendors as niche players. In the visionary column here, none of the vendors listed falls into them, and also they have the challengers and the leaders. So typically, a big organization will look at Gartner and also look at NSS Lab and then make their buying decision based on this. In some cases, they are going to go out there to vendors, soliciting 3 or 4 vendors to come in and make presentations. For the most part, they do a good job. And by the way, don't get me wrong, for the most part, both Gartner and NSS Lab do a very good job. However, generally, these are generic. The reports are generic. It tells us what a product is capable of doing. The missing link is that the environments, all right, are not taken into account. In other words, if, for example, MIT wants to implement an intrusion prevention system, and the MIT is still operating on megabits per second bandwidth, and someone throws out, or rather, gigabits per second bandwidth, and someone comes out there, due to all sorts of factors, sells MIT a product that can only perform at maximum wire speed of megabits per second. Certainly there is a mismatch there, and certainly intrusion will occur at some point because the MIT's unique user environment, is not taken into consideration while buying. So then, that means that an objective criteria is lacking that is scientifically based, through which organizations can select the best product to implement. All right, and so if we have to sum this up, the problems we've discussed above also create opportunities or have created opportunities. Yes, whereas we have hundreds of cybersecurity products in the marketplace from different vendors, some are better than others in different functional areas of performance. And as we all know, budget and implementation goals are the 2 biggest determinants in product selection. That means that choice of the best fit product affects the organization's ability to realize the goal of intrusion prevention. And of course, as we all know, end user selection of one product is often very, very difficult, all right, or at least a pain point, because the products and technologies are poorly understood, and also they are very complex to implement, all right? And no wonder there are all these reports for so many failed implementations. And so what do we do about that as an industry? I remember in 2004 or 2005, there was this talk about the industry moving away from intrusion detection to intrusion prevention, which makes sense because if we as security professionals are going to be sitting out there waiting for an intrusion to occur or take place, and then we detect them and then are bragging, what have we done? Have we earned our money worth for the organizations that employs us? No. So the trend then was, according to Gartner, that provoked the discussion and led to the new direction. The trend moved from intrusion detection systems to intrusion prevention systems. So we consider that a very, very significant breakthrough in the industry. But 15 years and counting, there seemed to be a problem still selecting, or rather, for different organizations out there, big and small, when they are sourcing their solutions, the objective criteria, that is scientifically based, that can be used to select the best product for their environment is still lacking. And that is the reason why we came up with a solution that is going to be marketed as a SaaS tool. It's an artificial intelligence solution. And essentially what it does is it looks at it provides a wider scope of visibility into the underpinnings of each vendor product. Within the solution itself, we have more than 2,000 what we call anatomical nodes. And then we also have mimicked several and hundreds of user unique environments. And so then the product called Intrusion Point, an analytics SaaS tool, will perform a decision-making analysis for each user based on his or her unique requirements. And then the result is that the best fit match is produced that addresses their needs, from a holistic perspective. Yes, it's one thing to talk about holism or holisticism. Please correct me, I don't know the right English finally to use here. But it is another thing to truly reflect this in the solution. So I am going to give you a brief presentation of this artificial intelligence tool. It's been in development since 2008, and thank goodness we have a better product now. But this will be out in the market, we believe, in the fall of 2016, a few months from now. So the SaaS tool is designed to allow users of intrusion prevention products customize a business case analysis for any deployment and target environment or market. It accepts a wide range of data, including Gartner's technical parameters, including NSS Labs, and certainly business and financial and service planning inputs from end users. All right. Then it also simulates a network deployment and the operations and uses a variety of all of the factors local to an implementer's environment. Logically, we have represented this here. For example, this is Charles, and Charles has the need to implement next generation firewall. All right. Now the question is going to be, I'm going to be looking at the companies out there to source from and the products that I think make sense for us to deploy. I will specify my requirement. The requirement is going to look at the services that this company provides, compare a wide range of product vendors, then look at the different products out there, and then compare them. All of the input requirements from the end user is going to be crunched by a logic, which is a computer implemented method that has been built into the system. And in effect, we are going to scientifically compare all vendor products in one place, all right, and then also come up with the reports in different forms, charts, analytics, detailed reports that is custom built for each user based on his or her own unique specifications. Now, the tool answers several questions that are bugging the industry today that Mr. Weldon attributes to as primarily responsible for the failure of implementations. For example, how do I specify my network environmental requirements? What is or are the best fit products? What other options make sense for my environment? How can I service the agreement? How can the service agreement be optimized for my deployment or implementation plans? So a lot of factors go into the development of this tool. And that means that in the construct leading to the SaaS tool, there are different steps. And this is what we've tried to represent here as conceptual approach. The artificial intelligence implemented logic first defines a string of variables mimicking user implementation environments. It will also decode the unique attributes of each vendor solution, and we call it the DNA. So if you go to the system, you get the DNA of each product in different areas, functional scenarios, technical characteristics, component characteristics, solutions integration, etc. For example, under functional scenarios, we are looking about in the case of intrusion prevention systems, the ability or capabilities of that particular solution in device log event processing, intrusion prevention alert processing, intrusion processing techniques, correlation or correlating data, IDS architecture, IPS architecture, etc. In the case of the technical characteristics, DNA, we are looking at the dictation technology for that particular tool. We are looking at several other issues like supported environments, implementation methodology, user interface, evidence preservation, scalability, etc. In the case of component characteristics, we are looking at data formatting and processing, reporting, printing. In the case of solutions integration, we are looking at how the solution integrates with widely available enterprise-level solutions such as identity management solutions, directory services, Tivoli system solutions, for example, cryptographic solutions like PKIs. So you can see that that's the beauty here. It's over a wide construct. All of this gives us produces more than 2,000 anatomical footprints of each product out there. All right, and then there are a series of inbuilt steps or logic created, like creating a query set from the database. The query set has multiple alternatives. For example, a vendor's product might meet the requirements to have the capability to meet our 128 encryption bits requirement, 256 bits, etc. So there are different possibilities that have been defined in what we call a decision-making matrix, and all of this good stuff, all right, that follows. And then in the end, what we get is in evaluating all the attributes, the computer logic will score them and rank them and present to the user the best fit. Currently, as implemented, there are 3 options: the best, and then the next, and then the least best. So you are going to have 3 solutions there, ranked in the order of excellence in terms of functional performance, etc. We are going to discuss this a little more pictorially, but let me, for the sake of time, go over to some of the basic design solution concepts. This is the system architecture. Here you will see we have a front-end and back-end architecture, and of course the intermediary. Here we have a subscriber that comes after the subscription and payment processing. Try to enter a search, meaning I'm looking at all the products here from HP, IBM, Cisco systems. These are my requirements. This is my environment. I need an IDS or IPS solution that is based on the anomaly, all right, dictation technology, not signature based, and all of those good stuff. So the system is probably going to take about 1 hour or 1.5 hours. So this is very, very detailed to enter and customize the own system. Then it will go to the business logic and automation. This is the web templates, of course, which will complete. But this is the business logic and automation engine, which goes into the database, fetches and crunches it, and then ranks them, and then sends out a report. All right, and these reports are graphs, charts, and analytics. All right, and of course the back-end process is the admin users and the vendors. The vendors come into the system, enter their products, spending about 5 hours telling out of which the system now scientifically and objectively ranks them and cranks them and arranges them into the data matrix. Now, also, this is certainly I did a poor work here, and I'm sorry, MIT gave me my degree, but they taught me how to present data. I must confess that this block of algorithm is so wide that representing it better would certainly entail breaking it into 2 slides or even 3. But I thought that consolidating them into 1 slide is better. But as Louis informed us at the beginning, I am going to email this for any one of you who is interested. This is the computer logic. You can see some mathematical formulations here. We begin with queries here, and then we have our scoring and weighting factors here. Then we have information about the companies, about the different services, next generation firewall, intrusion prevention systems, etc. And then also breaking each one of these into different areas. The different areas we discussed, functional scenarios, technical characteristics, etc. All right, so this is, pretty very scientific and good stuff. But again, as I said, I will make this available to any one of you who is willing to discuss this further or review it further. And by the way, all of this is patented. We have a provisional patent pending full award of a patent. All right, so if you are interested, I have already explained this, the mathematical computation logic here. All right. And the numbers here reflect what we already discussed. For example, using the system, we have an input feed that produces results. The system looks for matching information from the data set that was fed into the database system. All right. Then it executes the business logic computation and generates desirable output information in different forms. All right. Now, I want to share some samples of the underpinning, all right, the system architecture underpinning. For example, for each company, and certainly for all the products, we have all these functions. This might be functional scenario. This might be technical characteristics. This might be solution integration. This might be mobility. This might be cloud, pricing, etc. They are all weighted with raw scores and actual scores. All right. So these are some of the matrices that are fed into the decision-making matrix. Now, let us look at the user aspects here. I think I have 10 more minutes to present, and then I'll take your questions. Specifying user requirements, and of course, the product DNA mapping. As I explained earlier, the beauty of this artificial intelligence solution is that all the top vendors, they have their footprints, the footprints of their products decoded into a database system. And so that's what we've said here. Each product in the database system consists of more than 2,000 anatomical nodes that, of course, heuristically processed by the computer logic. For example, we have, as I explained earlier, functional scenario footprints, technical characteristics footprint, such as the dictation technology, solution products, solution integration, customer support, the kind of stuff you get from Gartner. This is typically the kind of stuff you get from NSS Lab. All right, and of course, some pricing information. However, the system does not score any product based on pricing and licensing, because for us to do so would mean now that we are not taking into account that some good products might not be priced well, and we don't want to introduce any bias into the system. All right, so pricing and licensing is provided only informationally. It's not part of the scoring. If we take a deep dive into the functional scenarios, you remember? This is functional scenarios. When you get into the system and you are specifying your requirements, you will be confronted to provide your unique requirements in different areas. Alert processing, for example. So now you tell us, when you click on this, ability of the product to pass and normalize IPS alert from different network and host sensors. If you click on this, it's still going to give you a variety of options, all right, what you are looking for specifically. And so also is the case here and all of this. So that's the beauty of trying to decode each product into the anatomical makeups, all right? Ability to accommodate standard syslog files, for example, is one of them, etc. The product's incident alert capabilities, ability to rank alerts by probability, etc., and all of those good stuff that network and security engineer operators would want. And again, we talk about device log and event processing. You can see when you click on this, you still have a drop-down menu, and also you click on this, you have a variety of options. So this is quite nice and cool. In terms of intrusion processing techniques, you have a bunch of nodes here, anatomical nodes here. For example, the ability of the solution to process alert information and event logs using signature profiles. All right? All of these are presented in the system. And so with that now, as we know, it's also good and very important to present the results into different types for the network level operator, for the supervisor, for the CEOs. And for that, the system has been built to report in different shapes and forms. The analytics, the system is huge on analytics and visualization. Let me share some examples. You can see this is a comparative graph of 3 vendor products, all right? And of course, these are dummy items. This is Stonysoft next generation firewall. You can see how it scores on technical characteristics. It seems all of them. From the dummy test I ran, it seems that all of them had the same input value here. Component characteristics, you can see the divergence. You can see the divergence on solution products, and the divergence also on solution integration, etc. All right, so you can have a comparative graph as an output. And then you have powerful analytics in different shades. Oh my goodness, this is not too clear here. All right, but also in different areas. I know that customer support, solution integration, component characteristics, all of these good stuffs. The analytics on specific company of your choice. For example, do you want to source your product from a company that has been in the market or less than 3 years, 3 to 5 years, or more than 5 years. All right. So there are a lot of tons and tons of analytics that have gone into this particular reporting system. And with that, let's summarize. In a nutshell, the current method of sourcing our intrusion prevention solutions are not optimal. All right. Largely, we go by what the selective organizations like Gartner and NSS Lab tells us about each company and products. And of course, certainly the vendor pitch, sales pitches out there. What is lacking is that none of them is specific to a unique user environment. And so Intrusion Point will fill a market void. As I said about 15 years ago, thereabout, we did not have an ITS. We think that when we throw out this in the market, something better will evolve over time, but at least it's a good beginning. It's able to decode the DNA of all the solutions and products out there. It uses a computer logic to heuristically analyze complex metrics and certainly addresses the problems of implementing with unfit products. So the value proposition here is that we now have the ability to scientifically resolve the problems of limited scope of visibility, all right, into intrusion prevention solutions. And again, folks, let me restate here. Intrusion prevention here is not intrusion dictation systems. We are looking at, for now, the solution is limited to intrusion dictation systems, intrusion dictation prevention systems, firewalls, and next generation firewalls. But we are going to go into identity management systems. Also, the solution eliminates poor product selection and implementation with unfit solution. And certainly, in the end, it will help organizations that use them to at least realize their set goals on intrusion prevention. Thank you. Now your questions.
Just terrific as always. Folks, just a reminder, if you have questions, please type them directly into the chat section addressed to everyone. And I've never done this before, but I'm going to ask the first question myself. Charles, you already had a PhD when you came to MIT SDM, but yet you came for a second or third master's degree as well. Why did you come here, and what did you learn at MIT and SDM that helped you develop this approach?
Well, certainly knowledge for me is not something that starts and ends with one degree or attendance of one institution or another. MIT has always been the engineer's dream, so I see myself as an engineer because the bunch of earlier degrees I had were in engineering, and I practiced engineering for a very long time. But as you know, we always pray to win a lottery. So when I got my own lottery and got into MIT, I had my PhD. I had ideas of certain things we can do in the industry to solve some problems, but the methodology, the formal way of putting them together was the missing link. So at least in some of the courses and the projects we did, especially on systems architecture, systems dynamics, they helped open up different concepts that helped me to put this together. And of course, MIT is highly entrepreneurial. We also learned a lot on how to translate our ideas into entrepreneurship. So I can say that it's an amalgamation of having to put concepts that are translated into solutions while bundling them into entrepreneurial ventures. That was the missing link, and that was what I got from the program.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We haven't received any other questions yet. We'll give folks a minute or two so we can see if there's interest. Please type your questions right in to the chat section addressed to everyone. Thank you. Okay, then we will end it here. Again, folks, we will be sending you a link to the recording and the slides in about a week, and we will also include Dr. Ihiguro's email address so you can contact him directly if you have any questions or anything you'd like to discuss. Oh, wait a minute. Here's a question. Will this system work with industrial control systems devices?
Yes, essentially, this solution is supposed to be used everywhere. I believe that industrial control system devices in those organizations, they deploy intrusion prevention solutions, be them firewalls, next generation firewalls, intrusion prevention systems, intrusion detection systems. So the answer is yes.
Okay, great. Folks, it might be that some of you are experiencing problems submitting your questions, so please send them. If you do have a question and you don't see it appear in the chat, please send it to L Slavin, S as in Sam, L-A, V as in Victory, I-N, at MIT.edu, or E. Ferris, as in Eric, F as in Frank, E-R-R-I-S, E-R-R-I-S, excuse me, at MIT.edu. Thank you. And that last question, folks, was from Tim Larson. Okay. Well, again, thank you for joining us, and we will be sending out the link to the slides and the recording in about a week. Have a great day, everyone, and Charles, thank you for another fantastic webinar.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.